If you've ever wondered how an all-good God and evil can exist side by side, or why religions focus so much on this battle, stay with me. The answer might just change the way you see the world. Before we dive into why the devil was created, we need to ask a simpler question. Where did this figure even come from? Because the devil as we know him today is not some eternal cosmic force, but a symbol shaped by centuries of culture, religion, and human imagination. Long before Christianity, Judaism, or Islam existed, ancient civilizations had rich spiritual worlds full of gods, spirits, and demons. In places like Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Canaan, people believed in many supernatural beings, some helpful, some harmful, but none quite like the devil we imagine. Evil was not personified as a single villain, but scattered among many minor spirits or natural forces. Take ancient Mesopotamia, for example, where demons often caused illness or misfortune, yet they served under gods and were not independent agents of ultimate evil. There was no Satan figure ruling over darkness, in opposition to a god of light. Instead, chaos and order were often balanced forces, not necessarily moral opposites. In early Jewish scripture, the figure closest to the devil is Satan, but this word simply means adversary or accuser. It is not a name but a title, and in those texts, Satan is not a rebel or evil spirit, but more like a heavenly prosecutor testing humans' faithfulness. For example, in the book of Job, Satan appears as a member of God's court, granted permission to test Job's loyalty. There is no suggestion that Satan opposes God or embodies evil, just that he challenges humans to prove their faith. The picture starts to shift after the Jewish exile to Babylon, around the 6th century BCE. During this period, Jewish thought absorbed ideas from Persian religion, Zoroastrianism in particular, which featured a striking dualism between a god of light and truth, Ahura Mazda, and a destructive spirit of darkness and lies, Angra Mainyu or Ahriman. This dualism introduced the concept of a cosmic battle between good and evil forces locked in eternal conflict. This concept influenced Jewish and later Christian ideas about evil, transforming Satan from a tester of faith to an opponent of God, a being actively opposing goodness rather than acting under God's authority. Christianity took this evolution further, creating the image of the devil as a fallen angel named Lucifer. According to tradition, Lucifer rebelled against God and was cast out of heaven, becoming the ultimate adversary and tempter of humanity. This story gave evil a personality, a face to blame for sin and suffering, and set up a cosmic narrative of good versus evil that resonated deeply through Christian teaching. Islam also developed its own figure of the tempter, Iblis. Like Lucifer, Iblis refused to bow to Adam out of pride and was cast down. However, Islam emphasizes God's absolute sovereignty, so while Iblis tempts humans to sin, his power is limited and ultimately under God's control. This maintains strict monotheism while explaining the presence of evil and temptation. So when we look back, we see the devil as a concept that grew over time, shaped by different cultures and religious ideas, rather than a static being created once and for all. He is a symbol born from humanity's struggle to understand why evil exists, and how it fits with belief in a good and powerful God. Why do humans even need to personify evil as a being like the devil? Why not just accept that bad things happen, or that people do bad things without blaming a supernatural villain? The answer lies deep in human psychology and how our minds make sense of the world. One key idea comes from Carl Jung, the famous psychologist who spoke about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we don't like or refuse to see, our hidden fears, desires, and impulses. Jung suggested that instead of accepting this dark side within, we often project it outward onto an external figure, like the devil. This projection lets us keep our self-image intact by blaming evil on something outside ourselves, rather than admitting it lives within us all. This psychological need to externalize evil helps us feel safer and more in control. If evil is out there somewhere, we can fight it or avoid it. But if evil is inside us, that's a much harder truth to face. It's easier to say the devil made me do it than to take responsibility for our own dark impulses. Beyond the individual, this projection serves a social function too. Communities create stories and figures like the devil to explain misfortune, sin, or disaster. Blaming a supernatural enemy is simpler than grappling with complex causes like injustice, greed, or human error. In a way, the devil is a psychological and social scapegoat, a way to manage fear and guilt collectively. This makes the devil a powerful symbol, but also a potentially dangerous one, because when societies focus too much on an external evil, they can start to demonize groups or people, justifying violence or exclusion. Understanding the devil as a psychological concept challenges us to look inward, to face our own shadows and question the stories we tell about good and evil. Maybe the real battle isn't between God and the devil, but within each of us. The question of evil has puzzled philosophers for centuries. If God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good, how can evil exist at all? And why would God allow it to happen? This dilemma is known as the problem of evil, and it strikes at the heart of theology and philosophy. One popular explanation is the free will defense, the idea that God gave humans free will to choose between good and evil. And without this freedom, love and morality would be meaningless, unfortunately. This freedom also allows for evil to happen when people make wrong choices. So evil is a consequence of human freedom, rather than a direct creation of God. Another approach is the soul-making theodicy, proposed by philosophers like John Hick. This suggests that evil and suffering exist as challenges or tests that help develop moral and spiritual growth. Just as muscles grow stronger through resistance, souls become stronger through facing hardship. From this view, evil serves a higher purpose and a divine plan. Some philosophical traditions embrace a kind of dualism, seeing good and evil as two opposing forces in the universe, locked in eternal struggle. This contrasts with strict monotheism, but appears in some ancient religions and even influences modern thought. In this view, the devil represents the force of evil battling against God's goodness. There are also existential and secular perspectives that question the need for a devil or supernatural evil at all, suggesting that what we call evil is simply the natural consequences of a complex world, filled with suffering, randomness, and human flaws. These views push us to focus on responsibility and compassion rather than blaming an external figure. The philosophical exploration of evil doesn't give simple answers, but opens up deep questions about freedom, responsibility, meaning, and the nature of reality. It invites us to think beyond easy explanations and face the complexities of life and morality head-on. The devil isn't just a figure of theology or myth. He's a deeply embedded cultural tool that has helped societies explain the inexplicable and enforce social order through centuries. By personifying evil as an external being, communities could create a clear line between what was considered good and acceptable, and what was dangerous or taboo. This sharp division helped build social cohesion by uniting people against a common enemy, even if that enemy was symbolic. When disasters struck, be it famine, disease, or natural catastrophes, blaming the devil or demonic forces provided a simple, if frightening, explanation. It shifted the focus away from complicated causes like environmental factors or human mistakes. This scapegoating offered a psychological release from collective anxiety and guilt, giving people a target for their fear and frustration. Morally, the devil functioned as a powerful deterrent against behaviors that threaten the social fabric. Stories of possession, temptation, and eternal damnation warned individuals to conform to religious and social norms. The devil became a symbol of what happens when you stray too far from accepted boundaries, reinforcing obedience and control without the need for constant enforcement. But this power was double-edged. Societies that fixated too much on the devil often ended up scapegoating real people, particularly those marginalized or misunderstood. Accusations of witchcraft, heresy, or devil worship became tools to persecute women, minorities, or political opponents. History is full of dark chapters, where fear of the devil fueled witch hunts, inquisitions, and social purges, revealing how this symbol could be twisted into an instrument of oppression and violence. Beyond persecution, the figure of the devil also helped justify broader social hierarchies. By branding certain groups or ideas as evil, dominant powers could legitimize exclusion, colonization, or discrimination. This made the devil a potent symbol not only of metaphysical evil, but of real-world social and political struggles. Recognizing the devil's role in culture and society forces us to question how narratives about good and evil shape our own communities today. It asks us to be vigilant about how fear and the need for control might still lead to scapegoating and division, even without literal beliefs in demons or devils. In this light, the devil is as much a mirror reflecting human fears and power dynamics as he is a supernatural figure. Understanding this helps us move beyond simplistic explanations and engage with the messy realities of human society and morality. So why did God create the devil? Or perhaps that's already the wrong starting point. Maybe the more unsettling question is whether the universe actually needs a force we call evil at all. Is evil a built-in law of reality, a necessary shadow to balance the light? Or is it something we constructed in our minds, a category born out of our desire to simplify chaos into something we can point to, fear, and fight? If we strip away the fire and brimstone, if we set aside the horns and the tail, what's left might not be a supernatural being at all. What's left might be a story, a deeply human story, that tries to make sense of why good people do terrible things, why the innocent suffer, why life refuses to fit neatly into the boxes we build for it. Is the devil then just a symbolic creation, a psychological tool, a way for us to cope with the moral complexity of our own nature? Because facing that complexity directly is uncomfortable, even unbearable. It's much easier to say the devil made me do it than to confront the truth that temptation and cruelty are part of the human blueprint, that we all carry seeds of destruction as well as creation. But if this is true, if the devil is a reflection rather than a rival, then we have to ask something dangerous. Could religions evolve beyond this ancient binary? Could they function without the eternal split between absolute good and absolute evil? What happens to moral authority if there is no cosmic villain to rally against? Would compassion deepen, or would morality collapse? The answer isn't simple, because that binary has been a cornerstone of human culture for thousands of years. It's shaped laws, wars, art, and identity. Without it, we would need a new framework for ethics, one that accepts that human beings are capable of both light and darkness at the same time, that morality isn't a clean battlefield, but a shifting landscape. And maybe that's the real test. Not defeating the devil, but learning to live without needing him. Because as long as we keep externalizing evil, as long as we imagine it's always out there in the other, in the enemy, in the stranger, we avoid looking at the ways it's woven into our own actions, our systems, and our choices. In the end, the devil's greatest survival strategy might not be convincing the world he doesn't exist. It might be convincing us that he's anything other than human nature in disguise. And until we recognize that, we'll keep chasing shadows while the real darkness hides in plain sight.